I had all the resources necessary. I had physical therapists, exercise scientists, athletic trainers who are all, help me get to where I needed to be to play. But the side of the injury that was really difficult for me was getting over the emotional aspect, the loss of identity, the loss of self-esteem and those kinds of things.
Thank you for being a devoted listener of this podcast, Beyond Clean with ACE, dedicated to healthy, positive, and proactive content to support individuals primarily in the cleaning industry. Are you a facilities manager, a frontline staff member, or a building services contractor and are looking for knowledge that will help you advance both personally and professionally? Beyond Clean with ACE is now in Season 7, and speakers have consistently brought us messages which parallel our key focus of providing proactive knowledge. Many times the conversations here go beyond cleaning toilets, windows, and floors and helping individuals on a personal level. Subscribe and share with others so that everyone's life can be enhanced in healthy, positive, and proactive ways. And now, let's join Dave Thompson, Director of the Academy of Cleaning Excellence and your host here at Beyond Clean with ACE.
Hello, everyone. This is Dave Thompson, and yes, you are listening to another episode of Beyond Clean with ACE. We are in, I guess it's 2023, Season 7. Gosh, as I do this, there's just hundreds of podcasts and hundreds of people that we've met here at our podcast show. So glad to be with you again today. And, we talk with everybody. And as it says up here, Beyond Clean with ACE. Why do we say that? We're not talking about just cleaning and mopping and, all that kind of stuff. No more of that boring stuff. I know how you feel about that, folks. But you know what? Things happen in our world. We have injuries, and then there's things we have to deal with. And hey, I'm just like everybody else. I've had those things too. I don't know about you, but maybe there's a trauma that's happened in your life. Got somebody on the line today that, I think he's got a few ideas about how to deal with those things, in your personal life and in your business life. So let's see if our technology works with us today, and let's see if we can bring Keagan. Are you there? I can see you.
Yep. I'm here. How are you doing, Dave?
Okay. So folks, if you have been listening before, we have usually done our podcast by audio only, but this year we're doing both audio and, visual. Yeah. So see, now you can see Keagan smile. There he is. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why are we listening to you today, Keagan?
Great question. So essentially, I'm an author, and I was an athlete for a very long time. I played American football for nearly 2 decades. I played through college and then briefly afterwards. And as a result of football, like most people, I had a number of injuries. As a result of my entire career, I tore both of my ACLs, requiring 4 surgeries, and had a number of other things that I went through. But what I noticed is I really struggled with the psychological side of physical injury. It is something where, especially during my first ACL tear, when I was a junior in college, that I had all the resources necessary. I had physical therapists, exercise scientists, athletic trainers who are all, help me get to where I needed to be to play. But the side of the injury that was really difficult for me was getting over the emotional aspect, the loss of identity, the loss of self-esteem and those kinds of things. And obviously I had other events in my life that made it necessary for me to learn a skill set where I wouldn't be reliant on, I would be there for myself almost. And then I would later reverse engineer that into how my life as an athlete and now as a businessman will be better using psychological flexibility or acceptance and commitment therapy. So,
okay, let's just jump back a little bit on this, Keagan. Mm-hmm. Explain to people that may not be completely, and we've got people that listen to this from all over the world. let's explain what ACL means. I know we
Yeah,
use
yeah, yeah.
these terms like this all the time, and let's explain that a little.
Yep. The ACL is a ligament in the knee. It's the anterior cruciate ligament. It's one of the two main cruciate ligaments in the knee that essentially keeps your knee stable when you're. It's essentially like the brakes of your body, especially when you're trying to stop in sports. So
Okay.
that's the easiest way to.
So how does that apply to somebody on a day-to-day basis, just walking and running and bicycling and stuff like that?
Yeah, so if you don't have an ACL, I was kind of a weird case because even though both of mine were torn, the surgeons said that it didn't feel like it was torn. So usually, I'll just go from I'll speak in generalities. Usually, it's very your knee is very unstable when you're walking, and maybe you stop walking. You plant your foot to maybe stop walking down the street if someone cut in front of you. You'd feel a bit of a give. Your knee wouldn't feel stable. Usually when you do that, it's a firm stop. But if you had a torn ACL and you were typical, you'd feel a give. And many times your knee will give out and people will fall over just kind of randomly and those kinds of things, because it's a very peculiar feeling. I guess it kind of takes you off your feet.
Well, one that I don't really want to enjoy.
No. It's not one that I would highly recommend, and it's yeah, that's for sure.
Okay, so yours was both were torn, and you went through the surgeries. So, what's the recovery usually?
Recovery is usually, I mean, the literature kind of is all over the place on this, but so I'll speak to this as best I can. But essentially, what they've seen is the best recovery takes a little over a year, most of the time. So there's obviously the freak athletes like Adrian Peterson and those individuals who got over it much sooner. But it takes a long time physically as well as psychologically from a confidence standpoint to get over it most of the time.
You know what and it's not quite the same, but as I said in the intro, we've all had some kind of a trauma that we've had to get over. Mine was quadruple bypass surgery 2.5 years ago.
Yep.
And I totally understand what you're saying here, Keagan, because it was that recovery period that was so much more, that I still remember today, so much more than the surgery itself. I mean, and yes, you remember those things, and it doesn't go away. You always remember it, don't you?
Yeah, certainly. There's no control at the delete button for the brain, unfortunately. I've been searching for it. I haven't found it, but it's really hard to get over. A lot of those things that you just can't forget. So most
people struggle with that the most, and that affects their business life as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like anything else. When something happens in your life, these skills that I've had to cultivate are applicable. I am very, thankful, but they're applicable in life because we obviously don't want negative things to happen to us or our businesses, but it's inevitable. There always will be some challenge or difficulty that you'll come across, and being more psychologically flexible will only help you in your business pursuits and just in your day-to-day relationships with, your loved ones.
I'm kind of imagining that somewhere during that first year that you decided, or was this something that, immediately afterward you go, okay, well, that part of my life's over and I got to learn something new. How long did it take?
Yeah. So I'll go into a bit more of the specifics on why I learned about this, I guess. After my second surgery, I'll back up just slightly.
Okay.
Essentially, I'll never claim that I figured out that this is what I wanted to do after I got hurt. I don't learn that quickly. I'm a very slow learner. My fiance will tell you. So I had to go through a bit more trauma before I actually learned these things. So what happened?
Maybe we need to get her on here and get her viewpoint.
Yeah. I'm sure she'd love to have a conversation with you.
I could just see that'd be a whole podcast in itself, Keagan.
I guarantee it would be. So essentially what happened is after my second ACL tear, I was again at a private tryout for the CFL, or Canadian Football League. and I tore it towards the end of the tryout. And after that, my life kind of fell apart because I was a football player essentially my whole life. And, I woke up the next day and I pretty much knew that my career was over. So I was no longer, a football player. So that's a very difficult thing for, a young adult to come to terms with. And after that, it started to really cascade over, all aspects of my life. I was, abusing substances. I was making poor relationship decisions. And I started dating who I would find out would be a very severe alcoholic. And due to that relationship, I endured a lot of emotional abuse, kind of culminating in me being suicidal for a time. So that's what put me on kind of the, the road of, I knew my life needed to change or it wasn't going to end up the way I wanted it to. So now this brings you to obviously me getting out of that relationship and getting, starting to get the therapy that I needed. So,
and this is what you see in the news so much today is, everybody wants to focus on the visual things that are creating our trauma in life. And I'm just going to say it that way. There's a lot of turmoil going on in the world, and we always want to focus on the items. But as what you're saying here, Keagan, the items are not the issue. It's that mental that you can't see.
Yeah. A lot of times people are carrying around issues, just day-to-day they have stuff going on in their lives. And that's generally what's most important to them as well. And if they don't have any way to combat or prepare themselves for the next hurdle, it really sets them up for difficulty.
I imagine that then saying, I need a therapist was next hardest thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that time I'll go a little farther in the story. So obviously, that's when I thought I was at bottom. I got out. I started getting therapy, but that's actually when I was the most frustrated because when I started seeing my therapist, I knew I was doing the right thing, but I wasn't seeing any progress. I was still having, those thoughts. And, it just wasn't going the way I wanted it to. So I scoured the internet because I didn't know the answer and I needed to know the answer. If there's any other type of intervention that would maybe benefit me more. And I came upon acceptance and commitment therapy, which is slightly different than what I was going through, which is most people think, when they think of therapy, it's cognitive behavioral therapy, and I can explain the differences. But that's I changed therapists and I started to slowly creep out of, my hole that first session. It obviously wasn't a magic pill or anything like that, but I started to see that very slow, measured progress.
So I'm thinking, was that the therapist as a person, or was it the style of the therapy that helped you get out?
It was more so the intervention itself. ACT is definitely different than CBT, just in what its goal is, I suppose, because CBT essentially looks to minimize, your feelings of depression or negative thoughts and stuff like that. And I'm one of those people who, if you say, don't look over there or don't think that, I'll look over there and
That's the first thing you're going to do.
Yeah.
Oh, you're one of those people that when the accident's on the road, you stop and look the accident over there instead of drive forward.
Yep. My fiance would definitely tell you that's me. Yep. That's
here she is again. I mean, she keeps creeping up in this conversation, Keagan.
Yeah, I know. If she's finishing up her doctorate, so she couldn't make it today. Probably at my benefit, just so I stay out of trouble. But yeah. So essentially, it's just a slight difference in how you're dealing with it. So CBT again looks to minimize the negative symptomology, and ACT essentially looks to help you deal with the inevitable negative things that will occur in your life. So,
and that's true. Things do happen. I tell people in all my life and career, dealing with all kinds of different people, you have to have the lows to know what the highs are.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to focus on the highs because the lows will always be there.
Yeah. And I mean, especially, society today kind of tells you, if you're sad, something's wrong with you. But I mean, if you dive into that a little bit, you know, if you lost a loved one, I'd be more worried about you if you weren't upset than if you were, because to love in life is obviously the greatest gift, and that comes with a negative side effect. Obviously, when you lose someone you love, it's extremely difficult.
It's just like anything else, Keagan. You know, I love certain types of food, but man,
mm-hmm.
I know that as much as I love it, that it's going to give me problems later. There is a good and bad to almost every decision we make. It just depends on which one you're going to focus on and which one you're ready for.
Yep. Yeah, certainly. I couldn't agree more. There's always a backside to the coin.
Well, and sometimes there's more than one side to that coin.
Might be a cube. You know,
I was going to say, no, wait a minute. I don't know. You know, even a coin has more than two sides. You do know that.
Yeah. Although I've never had it land on one of the edges, but you never know.
Yeah. Well, it always, you know, sometimes it'll land on the edge before it flips over on the side.
I mean, I guess you're right. Yeah. It'll be there for a second anyways.
And I think that's the point of these kind of conversations, you know, and folks, what we talk about here at the show is anything that's healthy, positive, and proactive. Mm-hmm. And it's not that coin fell on the side. It's when it does, which is life, mm-hmm. which way are you going to flow with it, you know?
Yeah, certainly. And how are you going to prepare yourself for the next time it happens as well, obviously, because again, as you alluded to, there'll always be a next time.
So I'm thinking you've done a lot with this now, because these aren't the issues in your podcasting and doing other stuff. So let's fast forward maybe.
Yeah. So essentially, fast forward a little bit, obviously, when I got farther along in my therapy, I'm a writer, just is who I am. And, you know, as a result of that, my therapist gave me a lot of writing assignments to get a handle on my emotions. And it kind of culminated in me having the outline for my book. So I thought about, you know, what do I want to put out in the world after, you know, I became, you know, I finished my doctorate not long ago in 2021, and I wanted to put out content for, you know, all the people who are going through this and kind of feel alone psychologically. So I went to the internet and I found a whole bunch of references to really dive into the literature behind acceptance and commitment therapy. And I know obviously the book is centered around, you know, the title is heavily geared towards those who have torn their ACL, but this really goes into how any individual can benefit from psychological flexibility, because it doesn't just go into me, you know, playing sports or how I, you know, would have benefited as an athlete due to these, you know, skills, but also as a person, because I have very intimate stories in there about all the way back when I was a freshman in high school. I have severe anxiety that has led to panic attacks a number of times. And I depict an instance where I, you know, would go and essentially hide in the bathroom just because I would get kind of overstimulated and I could feel panic attacks coming along, you know, as an athlete, which isn't something you typically think of when you think of a high school football player. You know, so I just depict that. And then I go into how it could have, you know, my life could have been improved with these skills. So,
you know, as I looked at the book the first time when I pulled it up there, I thought torn, and I'm just the way my brain works. I'm sorry, Keagan, but I didn't really think about the ACL because it wasn't, you know, it wasn't, I was thinking about the mental tear, and that's what you're talking about here. The mental torn part of it was more traumatic than the physical. Yeah,
essentially. And you don't have to tear your ACL to have one of those psychological challenges. There's a plethora, and I'm sure I'll have to go through more of them, and I'm sure your listeners and you will as well. So it essentially speaks to any, psychological challenge that occurs due to life.
Yeah. And when you said panic attacks, I totally understand that, because along with my issue with heart, I also have COPD, and got to tell you folks, breathing is very essential. And whenever you're struggling to breathe, it as I've grown older, the panic attacks from not being able to breathe like I want to comes more frequently. And, you know, I had a recent visit, you know, and I'm telling people right here, you know, my doctor said, you know, there's nothing physically wrong with you. You maybe need to start talking to somebody about it. And I think that's where we all have this decision in our head. When's that time?
Yep. And only a thing to note on that is obviously you have to come to that decision on your own, because the efficacy of these things are strictly behind. Obviously, there's a lot of literature that shows that cognitive behavioral therapy is very effective. Acceptance and commitment therapy is very effective. Medicines in a lot of cases are very effective, but unless you're, willing to put the work in and believe that it's going to help you, you're not going to see any benefit, unfortunately. So you have to be completely bought in. That's why generally when they talk about alcoholics or addiction, they have to be on board and want to get better. Otherwise, they're just going to jump back into the old cycle, unfortunately.
So let's give people kind of an idea of what's been I want to say the span of your life. I mean, how many years are we talking about in all of this?
So as far as the difficulty with are you talking about like panic attacks? Are you talking about like the suicidal ideation? Or
well, give us a little bit of a timeline as we talk, because some people aren't able to watch the video on this.
Oh, okay,
they can't see the book that I thrown up there and everything. So, folks, if you're listening to the audio version, in the video, we were showing the website and the book, but and you can't see how. Well, compared to me, how young Keagan is.
Okay.
So let's give people a time frame for what all of this part of your life this all took.
Yeah. So essentially, my book goes from freshman year in high school, so roughly 14, 15, in there somewhere is when I really knew that I wasn't, typical. I guess I had issues that. Unfortunately, just I kind of run in my family that are make things a bit challenging. And then, fast forward to, I was probably 22 when I tore my first ACL, and I started to really understand that as soon as you take, an athlete's sport away, you're essentially taking away their main coping mechanism. So you're kind of left to your own devices. That's when I started drinking more and those kinds of things. And then my second ACL tear was probably when I was 24, 25, little after college, obviously, playing football. And then fast forward to, the real challenge in my life was from 25 to 27 and a half was when it was probably most difficult. And at this moment, I am 30 years old. So it's been, the book essentially spans most of my life at this point.
And so I'm kind of imagining the reason you do podcast and book is because you now have grown at 30 to start doing something different with all of this.
Yeah. So essentially it's led into, I'm doing a couple things with this, obviously. I'm helping other researchers develop a framework to give to those practitioners like athletic trainers, especially, or physical therapists, to kind of address these psychological challenges. So the students aren't alone, in this realm of injury. Instead of just working on the leg strength, you have to address the underlying issues as well. So that's one part of what I'm working on. I have my blog when I try to provide as much information as possible to my readers on knee injuries and also, just the psychological effects of them. And then I also, I obviously, as you alluded to, do podcasts to, network as well as get my name out there. And I will be starting my own podcast, hopefully by 2024. I'm trying to be as conservative as possible. So
Well, and I think that's the interesting part of this, Keagan, is that life situations change what we do,
Mhm.
not always for the negative. You
Yeah.
can take something that's happened and make something positive out of that. Most people, as we grow older, that's what happens. And as you've been saying, it's our choice, right?
Yeah, certainly. And I actually find, I mean, obviously I love football with, everything I had, but I find just as much enjoyment. I also provide, therapy and coaching to individuals who are in that situation where I would have needed it. And it's by far more gratifying and satisfying to help someone who is in, the same situation that, I was in. So that's probably my favorite part of, what I'm currently doing. But obviously I only have so much time in a day. So I'm also working on courses and things of that nature to provide to universities and other institutions to help these individuals. So I'm trying to put, myself out there as much as possible in order to help these individuals.
No, I'm just thinking here as you're talking about this, Keegan, I'm thinking, you know what? There had to be some of this stuff out there before all of this happened to you. And you're saying you're building this stuff. Is it really all that new, or is it your take on what happened?
Essentially, it's directed, at least in what I'm doing, it's directed completely towards athletes. And athletes, are unfortunately, and I was one of them, we're not known for our likelihood for us to go to a therapist. So, I mean,
you're too big macho guy to do that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I even remember, in college, us having, some mindfulness techniques and stuff like that. And all the guys kind of, laughing about it afterwards and stuff. But I mean, it truly, and that's what I try to do in the book is I kept it, very decently short, obviously. And I wanted to put a spin on it to where it's not just, to protect you for the future, but it's also, there's a lot of literature. And I think it's the best way to package it, that you'll actually become a better athlete. You'll make better game time, split decisions where you're under pressure. I think if you can package it like that, you'll get a lot more buy-in from athletes. So,
I remember what my surgeon said after the surgery, when I was in recovery and the last couple of days before I left the hospital, he said, you're going to become more aware of your body than you ever have in your life. You will never forget. And of course, he had some other things he added to it, but
yeah, certainly.
You do. You when these traumatic things happen to your body, you remember even after the recovery.
Mm-hmm.
It does not go away. We talk about people in the cleaning industry that, hey, I would say that a large part of the people that we're speaking to today, Keagan, are of the age over 55. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people in the cleaning industry that's still that way. They've had the trauma, they've had the injuries. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, that's why they're in the cleaning business, because this is the type of work they can do. But those injuries still linger with them. They're still there. Yep. I think that's why some people in the cleaning industry clean at night, where, when those things bother them, there's not anybody else around. I've always said it's out of sight, out of mind, but we still need a little bit of that encouragement.
Yeah. And I totally, empathize with that too, because we're on, no one really talks about it, but we have kind of a growing issue of total knee replacements. And that's kind of another thing that I'm looking to work on in the future as well is I've been told, for years now, ever since my second ACL injury and fourth surgery, that I'm on essentially the fast track to have a total knee replacement. They wanted to start talking to me when I turned 30, and I'm 30.
And those conversations are getting really close now, huh?
Yeah, well, I've spent a lot of time, obviously, just like mentally finding stuff that will help me, and I'm a very determined person. So I'm essentially out to my next project. As soon as I finish this up, will be preventing total knee surgeries because it's essentially it's gonna be my next endeavor, and I feel like it could help a lot of people because I've had to change the way I train, obviously, because I still work out. It's still kind of my, my extra therapy, I guess you could say. And I've had to completely change the way I do that I strictly focus on joint exercises that, stress my knee joint. I'm a little counter the culture where, usually if you'd hear about someone in my position, they'd probably do everything they could to not stress their knee. But
Well, yeah, they're going to avoid that completely, right?
yeah, and that's how the phrase if you don't use it, you lose it is very real. And I mean, it's just like anything else. If I want to have the strongest knees, in this case, I do. You'd never tell someone who wanted a big biceps to not stress their biceps at all. Don't ever work out your biceps, otherwise, it's not going to be good.
Right.
So I mean, anyway, you do have to systematically. Obviously, I'm not telling people to do exactly what I do. I've been slowly creeping along, and I'm able to do things now physically that I couldn't do before surgery. But there is a way to very slowly work on essentially just your joints. That's all I do. I do kind of some peculiar exercises. I'm definitely not a normal person you see in the gym. I'm not doing a lot of sexy things, but I feel better than ever. And I've returned to snowboarding and stuff like that I never thought I would get to do. So I'm very, very happy.
Well, and I think that goes too. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Just because I've had heart issues and I have lung issues doesn't mean I don't get out on my bike as much as I possibly can and
exactly.
do as much as I can. Because if all I do is just stop and go, hey, it hurts, then I'm going to be like a lot of the other people sitting around at over 65 waiting for that day where I can't do anything at all.
Yep. Certainly. Keeping moving is, very, very important, and continuing to do the things you love to do is probably most important, because we've seen, the literature definitely shows that as soon as, you retire, and if you just sit around, I mean, you're essentially giving yourself a death sentence, unfortunately. So.
Oh, I know that very, very well, because I live in an RV resort, and hey, a lot of the people are over 65. They just kind of wander around all day, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do my day? On the other hand, you can always tell the ones that because I see them they make laps, they ride their bike around the park, they're walking.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have some way to motivate us. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you talk about today during this podcast, is find a way to motivate yourself through those traumas.
Essentially, one thing that I found, obviously, I'm very much enjoying what I'm doing now, is, you have to, I can go about this two different ways. So essentially, I had to really think about what my values were. And people talk about goals a lot, and don't get me wrong, goals are very, very important. But values are something that we will never reach. It's like true north. And goals are kind of like stepping stones on the way to that. And as soon as I started to figure out kind of where I wanted to be heading, what I wanted to be doing, and then also tied in, pains that I've had in my life. If you dig into pain a little bit, those specific instances, you'll probably find, a very large passion underneath those, because you don't feel pain unless there's, some love involved. So that's essentially what led me to this career. So
I was looking at your website here, and I noticed that you have a number of links and places that people can go. And I think this is very beneficial, folks. If you would like some of this information, I'm sure that you can find, you've got a lot of links on here, my friend.
Yep. Yeah. I've slowly been accumulating, things that I think would be helpful for those with different issues that, I've struggled with or some of my clients have struggled with. Different patients have come forward and said, this really helped me. Would you be willing to put this out there? And I'm always, if it's helping one of my clients or patients, I'm definitely going to try to put that forward as much as I can. So.
Okay, so folks, some of you've been able to see this. What is your website, Keagan, for those that are listening?
Yep. It's theacltherapist.com or keagenhadley.com. But since my name gives, people fits in spelling, I usually just tell them theacltherapist.com.
Okay. And you can see his email address scrolling across the bottom.
Yep.
Any other things that we would want to impart here? I mean, we've given people a lot, and I think that your website with all of the links on there, it gives people a way to go and find some of that research you've already done.
Yep. Yeah. It gets them started on the path, I was on, because you can find whatever you want, especially nowadays on the internet, if you only take the time to look. So I give people kind of like a boost just to get started if they are looking. But one thing that I would say I talk about a lot with my clients is living in the moment is something that we have truly lost. Unfortunately, I mean, we always have some kind of social media or 47 new Netflix shows that are out, but really living where you are is exceptionally important. Cultivating your relationships, and it's really hard to do that if you're kind of mindlessly scrolling or, just watching another TV show that you're probably not going to, I mean, I'm as guilty as it, of it, of anyone of watching, mindless TV, but it is really important to live where you are, because if you're looking backward, you're probably going to be depressed about certain aspects. And if you're looking forward, you're likely going to be anxious about what's to come. So the best place to be is right where we are.
Life does have a lot of choices, and we make those every day, folks. And it's what you decide to do with that choice that's going to dictate the outcome. As Keagan has said here today, he's given you kind of a jump start if you're dealing with some of this trauma. I think it was interesting you didn't deal with just the ACL. You dealt with a lot of the other things, the PTSD. We've had a couple of gentlemen over here the last year talk about that. Medication isn't always the way to go. There's, it's therapy of the mind. And some of this is what we can do for ourselves. We don't need somebody else always, as you said. We've got to start that ourselves. I think that's great.
Yeah, you have to make the decision yourself. Generally, you can't completely dig out of a hole with no one involved. And I don't mean just a professional always, but many times you come to trauma due to a relationship. You need another relationship to get out of that situation, whether, again, that's, a friend, a fiance, someone else who you trust in your life. You're likely going to need someone else to kind of walk you out of that. So,
folks, if you're listening to the podcast, you can find all of this podcast and all the other ones we've done over the last 6+ years, beyondcleanwithace.com. We're now on the video channel, so you find that over on the YouTube channel. The links are all there. If you want to get with our full experience here at the Academy, this is at academyofcleaning.com, where you can find everything about all the courses, everything that we have for the commercial cleaning industry. You might also notice that I've got a podcast, or kind of a broadcast more, that I'm doing every Monday afternoon at 2:30. It's called Cleaning with the Academy. We'll give you a week of a little bit of a hack for you, and then a free 1 hour of consultation live right here on the air. So we hope you join us some Monday afternoon. Keagan, there's always two things I ask a guest before I let them go. So are you ready for a couple questions?
Oh, I've been waiting. Let's do it.
Where were you born?
I was born in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Really? Idaho?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I spent some time in my youth in Salmon, Idaho.
Okay. All right.
So okay. See, you never know these things, folks, till you ask the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so since we're at the first of this year, what is on Keagan's personal bucket list?
Obviously, I wanted to get married. I bring
knew
her up
that was
again.
coming. I
Yeah,
could just feel that was coming. I was like, or is he going to put it off till next year or what?
No, it's this year. It's this September, and we couldn't be more excited for that. And then we're also, looking forward to her graduating, and I hope to, achieve a financial goal of paying off the house within, the next probably couple of years. So.
Very well. Well, congratulations on the date.
Thank you.
Maybe who knows? By the end of the year, Keagan will come back on and say, "I did it."
Yeah. That's definitely the plan. That's the plan. If she can put up with me that long, I guess.
I'm not even going to go there, Keagan. We talked about her already, and here we are at the end of the show. We're still talking about her.
Yeah. What do you do?
I can guarantee if you come back again, Keagan, we're going to have to get her on the show because I need to find out some of the rest of the story here.
Oh yeah, she'd probably love that. She'd probably love it.
Folks, there's a reason I asked these two questions. We now know where Keagan was born, where he started life. We know a little bit about what life has dealt him and how he's overcome all of those things. We don't know where life is going to end, but we know that sometime this year, hopefully he's going to get married. The whole thing here is whatever your journey is, wherever you're going, whatever is happening, make sure that you keep that journey healthy, positive, and proactive. Until we see you again, folks, we're signing off.